Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Jerica Williams, who is a consultant, a coach, and a mom, and the owner of Coach Her Right. Coach, I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Let's go. So, take us through your background as a coach, but also obviously as an athlete. How did you get into the space originally? What was your own journey like? And then the pivot into being on the other side of things, coaching and leading.
Yeah, I would say basketball found me when I was 10 years old through a random free throw shooting contest that my friend asked me to be a part of because so she wouldn't be the only girl. Then my dad, I remember I had never played basketball. I was an athlete, but had never played basketball. And my dad, I went to the free throw shooting contest and I was terrible, terrible. And my dad took me outside and said, "Do you want to win?" And I was born a winner. And I said, "Of course I want to win." And so he lined me up and told me to hold my wrist like this. And I went back in and made 11 out of 12 free throws. Uh, and I think it was from there I realized that basketball was what I wanted to do pretty instantly. It became my focus. I brought a flyer home from the local rec center that was the league, and $50 was a lot for my family back then, but it was a great investment in hindsight, and ended up being one of like however many few girls were on the in an all boys rec league, and I ended up winning MVP my second year over all the boys, which is such a cool story because we're still friends. Some of those guys went on to play in the NFL and stuff, and so being able to have that is how my introduction into basketball happened. And then played, did really well in high school, got a scholarship to UCLA, and then transferred to San Diego State to finish off my senior year of college. I gave birth to my son, so I became a mom pretty early, and that obviously grounded my life around being a mother. I went into coaching because it was what I knew and kind of what I needed to nicely. And then from there, because I realized that daycare was costing as much as my paycheck was, I jumped into entrepreneurship, where I helped bridge athletes to their community, to their brand. This was some years ago, so it wasn't as prominent as it is right now. But so I was at the early stages of that, and I realized that I had a knack for connecting pieces and making things happen. I had a knack for coaching people and coaching systems and seeing them through. And so I was doing that while I was coaching as an assistant coach at the high school level for some years. When my son got to be a little bit older, uh, I realized that entrepreneur world was actually taking me away from him. I was traveling a lot. I found some early success. And then so I was like, what can keep my feet on the ground so where I can drop him off and pick him up every day? And it was coaching. I was like, let's jump into coaching full time. So I coached on the women's college Division 1 level for a year as an assistant. And I quickly realized that I was a head coach by nature. I think there's a long way between that assistant coaching seat and that head coaching seat. And we can get into this later, but I think it takes a unique personality to really be a head coach and lead a team. And I knew that was just my natural personality. And I wanted to lead a culture. I wanted to set a culture, lead it, and apply the things that I had learned over time. I became a head coach at Detroit Country Day School out in Michigan. Won We don't have to get into the story, but it's such a cool story. I acquired a team that had won 4 games in the previous 2 years, held tryouts, a bunch of non-basketball players, 8 freshmen, and we went on to the Michigan State Final Four my first year. So it was just that, yeah, it was so cool. Similar experience. I coached in Texas, and a similar story happened. So but I realized that, oh, I have something in me to give the game, to give these girls, and we can win along the way. Did that, and then Mike Davis, former head coach at Indiana University, he just got the head coaching job at Mississippi Valley State. I was working with some NBA players at the time while I was head coaching, like in the summer, and we had connected, and he invited me to work out his son, who was like Anton Antoine Davis is the second leading scorer all time in NCAA history. So yeah, it was crazy. So I was working him out, and his dad said, "Come work for me," and he's the men's college coach. And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think I want to do that. And I asked him, I said, why? Why do you want me to come work for you? And he said two things. One, if you do this, there'll be no level that you haven't touched. Not one. You have touched every single level. Youth, high school, college, pro, you'll have done it all. Men's and women's. And then second, you're the best person for the job. And so that year, that actually made me the only active female coach in men's basketball that year. And I was the third ever all time. So it was a monumental, groundbreaking moment that we didn't even know we were signing up for. To his point, it was just, oh, she's the best person for the job. And that introduced me to another side of basketball that I am so grateful for. Obviously, the male female differences, but the game was different. And so I got to see and learn basketball from a totally different vantage point. So I really expanded in that way. And then after that, I decided after we finished that season, just decided that I didn't want to be on the sideline anymore for a myriad of reasons that if you have questions about that, we can talk about that later. But I decided to take a sabbatical, and a self-imposed sabbatical, and sit for some months. It was almost a year when Nike called and said, hey, you got recommended by multiple people, and we're trying to fill this position to help us grow the girls basketball umbrella. And we would love to bring you on board. And so I've been with Nike for the last year or so. And my job really is to be the feet on the ground, to connect with the players, identify talent, create and chart pathways. Obviously, there's things within that corporate world, like we have events, we have things like that, but in really identifying players and the people that fit under our Nike umbrella, but also growing our league, growing our brand as it pertains to girls and women's basketball. So that's where I'm at now.
Love that. And I got to be careful here because I want to talk about some of the stuff that led me to you in the first place, but I want to talk about the coaching stuff first. So I have to kind of parse my time here. So basketball, UCLA, San Diego State, and then got into coaching at the Division I level for a year. Where was that?
Cal State Northridge.
Okay, Northridge. And so then I want to be a head coach. So I'm going to take a head coaching job, and it's in Michigan. Make that connection for me.
My son was coming of age, and that was the year we decided that he would go live with his dad primarily. So it made sense. It was bi-coastal and it was fine until
Uh-huh.
COVID hit.
Yes.
And I didn't see my son for 3 months because I couldn't get on a plane.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm packing up, I'm leaving. And so the head coaching job at Detroit Country Day was available. I went for it and I got it. And Michigan was very good to us.
Love that. Okay. I was just trying to make the connect from SoCal to Detroit Country Day.
Right.
Pretty sure Chris Webber's an alum there.
Yep. Shane
Okay.
Battier.
Yep. Okay, cool. So they're similar to us. So I'm assuming you're teaching, you're doing other faculty stuff and coaching, or were you just coaching?
I did I worked in administration in the athletics department
Yep. Okay.
and coaching.
Got it. Perfect. And then you do that. You guys have a great year, and you end up going to coach men's college basketball. And you mentioned that you were exposed to aspects of the game you weren't familiar with. And so I want to come back to this because what I want to lead with is actually one of the questions on the page. I told you we wouldn't always ask them, but in your case, we're going to, right? I went from assistant to head coach, and this entire show was designed to help support people transition into that role or into an assistant role, right? Because you went, I want to be a head coach, to now I'm going to be an assistant. But what did you realize right away that you needed to figure out, right? You felt like you were ready, that the calling was to be a head coach, and then you sit in that chair and it's real different. So if you can remember back to that time, what's the list that kind of caught you by surprise? Not that you didn't figure it out, but again, trying to help people understand what they're getting into when they move over 18 inches.
Yeah. When I went from being an assistant to a head coach, what things caught me by surprise? Maybe not surprise, but you don't get it until you're in it, that every single thing is your responsibility.
That's right.
So I went from, if I didn't want to take work home with me as an assistant, I didn't have to. That just wasn't an option as a head coach.
Yep.
I realized exactly how many people I'm responsible for, because as an assistant, you'll probably have your core players you're really connected to. You have people you're responsible to answering to. You have tasks and duties that are assigned to you. But as a head coach, you're responsible for every single element under your umbrella. And I think what doesn't get accounted for is I'm not just responsible for, let's just say, one team. These 15, I was a head coach and a program lead. So I had my middle schoolers, camps, clinics, my team. So let's just say it's 30 girls. It's not just those 30 girls. Now I'm responsible for their parents. Not responsible for, but they're
Yes,
under
you
my
are. Yes, you are.
exactly their parents, my assistant coaches. It's a whole thing hiring people when you've never hired people before. You think you know what you're looking for because you were an assistant. So that vantage point of being able to decipher and discern what's important to you in assistant coaches, I had to be very intentional and thoughtful about making sure I'm not hiring people who are my friends, not hiring people who I couldn't read through their character, and also being mindful of not hiring everybody that has the same superpower on my bench. Needed to have them do or be good at or great at different things to fill in the gaps of myself. And I think that was something that I had to learn to answer your question. When you're a head coach, your gaps get amplified.
Yes, they do.
As an assistant, I could be really good at this. If I'm a head coach, everything falls under my umbrella. So what I'm not good at is really going to be amplified, not what I'm good at. It's what I'm not. And so I have to learn how to fill those spaces. So I think that, and then to close the loop here, you're at your, I would say, non-athletic personnel, right? So you have your administration that's part of your team. Then you have teachers that are also part of your team. So there's anywhere from 50 to 75, 100 people, depending on what organization or what your organization looks like, that you're responsible for like that. And figuring out or learning along the way how to set a culture for that many people is a process.
Yes. Yes, indeed. How many years were you there?
I was at Country Day for 2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So you gave one of the best answers I've heard on this in regards to going right to the obvious in hindsight, but not always in the moment of covering your blind spots, right? Finding dissenting voice, figuring out how to align your staff to make you whole, right? And I think it takes a while to do that. Now, did you do that in your first year or after your first year?
Man, I got lucky. I did it in my first year. And it's literally why we won so quick. I had something to do with it.
Okay.
But if I missed on my hires, we wouldn't have had the same success. I always say the stars were aligned. My assistant coaches who had been in basketball for a long time, because I hired somebody who was older than me, younger than me, we covered the scope. We were like, we're never going to have this again. And we even said it to our players, don't think that this is normal. This does not happen. But we literally did not miss. Everybody gelled. There was the perfect balance of personality types. There was a perfect balance of knowledge, of ego and not ego. There was a connectivity and knowledge and application that was unprecedented in all of it. Even since then, I haven't seen that dynamic on a staff. I really haven't.
Awesome. What's the proverbial cliche here is that, hey, you're really good at X. What do you do about Y? And my answer is I hire it. I'm not trying to get better at it.
Listen,
right?
I'm reading this book, Who Not How.
Yeah.
Don't try to figure out how to do it. Who can I hire?
That's right.
That can do it. Yeah, absolutely.
So in that 2 years, and this is more me being curious than trying to share wisdom with the world, but what did you figure out that was your superpower? And what are the things that you realized I need to farm this out?
The thing that I realized was my superpower is empathy and communication. It was recognized, but I saw that my empathy was not a box on a piece of paper that I could check. People was like, what do you think makes a great head coach? And I stand by it, empathy. It's not something that you can conjure up. You can conjure up how to draw up some plays, but you can't conjure up empathy. And empathy allows you to connect to your players and your parents and your administration in ways that are, how do I say, imperative to moving the needle forward and upward. If you aren't able as a head coach to connect, you lose it all. You lose it all, or it can never really move in the right way. So that was definitely a superpower. I know how to communicate exceptionally well. And I learned, and I do because I continue learning how to do it. But I also think it was a gift. It's a superpower. So I think a superpower is also something you come in the world with.
Yeah.
You just, it has to be nurtured in.
You started talking at 3 months old, just
Yeah.
working on.
I was raised by two therapists.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. So communication is just, it was in my family. It's in my blood, but it's in my family too. So I grew up in that house. So empathy. And then the second part of your question, remind me what didn't I
Well,
do?
what did you realize you had to farm out? Just like, you
Yeah.
know what? I'm to our point, hire it.
Hire it. What did I have to farm out? Offense.
There you go.
I would say I understood basketball. Obviously, I've been coaching for a little bit on the assistant coaching side. So I understood basketball. When you're an assistant coach, you follow what the head coach is doing. When you're a head coach, you make it. So I knew there were certain standards that I wanted my team to execute on the court in terms of like, we'll be in the best condition.
Yeah.
But in terms of being able to identify my personnel and put in the X's and O's that work with my personnel, that was the thing that I realized, because I had to learn, don't compare. I tell young coaches this all the time. Do not say to young players, when I did it.
You mean they don't want to hear about you?
Gosh, don't say that. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. So I found that I needed to be able to apply my knowledge of the game to my group. So if I went in with, I know we're going to run 5 out, or I know we're going to, whatever, you pick the thing. And my group isn't good at that. I don't have 5 years with this group. I need to figure out how to win for the season. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what I hired, were basketball minds that didn't just give me, like, I had a Tex Winters on my staff. I really did. But he didn't have the ability to connect with the players, to hold the standards, I emphasize condition. I emphasize you're 10 minutes early or you're late, holding people accountable. Those things, and defense, I did exceptionally well. But when it came to offense and really putting people in their place where we can win games in the long run, anybody can win a couple games, but to stack some games and get the most out of my team, I had to outsource that.
How did you get to that point so early in your coaching career where you had the vulnerability to basically say, you know what, you're better at this than me, go do it?
That's a great question.
Because that's not normal. Normally we feel like we have to know everything. And I joke, the older I get and the longer I've been in education, the more my default response when a kid asks me something is, I don't know, let me go figure it out.
Do you know what? That's such a great question. I think I can point to the story that I just gave with the free throws. I didn't go, when I went outside, because I'd shot 1 for 12. And the feeling that I got losing was not how do I say? It wasn't a reflection of my potential. And so my father came in and taught me something. And I had to be willing to learn in order to win. And I think that I've always known that, because my will to win, and not like my will to win as a human is, and my will for like other people to win, it shows up in championships or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I think my will to win is way bigger than my ego. I don't care. However because especially young girls, any person, when you get a taste of winning and that like confidence that breathes through you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I went from this to that. I know the type of human I'm going to put out into the world when they can learn how to win.
Yep.
So that to me took out, teach me so that we can win.
Yep. Okay. I love that. I think you said after your dad took you outside, you went from 1 for 12 to 11 for 12.
Yeah.
Can I get him down here to do like a shooting clinic? Because like a 5 minute conversation to that,
Yeah,
like I
you
could use
know?
that.
Yeah, exactly. No, he was
Uh,
great.
all right, no, in all seriousness. Okay, then you go to Mike Davis, and you're the right person for the job. So we just finished talking about like what you're good at. What are the areas you're trying to fill? What was it that he was seeking that made you right, given that we just addressed these are the areas I'm really good at, these are the areas I'm working on? How did you fit into that puzzle? And you mentioned what I got exposed to that year was a huge growth moment, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think to answer the first part of your question, obviously he can answer that better than me. But one of the things that he said, so by that time I had worked with Stephen Curry and a bunch of high level NBA players. And when
Mhm.
when you're that close to greatness, it's hard to deny. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? It's let's take what you've learned and bring it over here if I have access to that.
Yep.
So I think it could have been low hanging fruit in that regard to just access to me in that way. But he saw me work with his son, and he saw that I knew basketball, but I think he also saw what was needed. I don't know if he could have named it early on like
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
and this will bridge the second part of the question. Men's spaces need a feminine energy, and feminine spaces need a masculine energy. The world needs both. And he didn't hire me because I was a woman, but I think hiring me illuminated the needs.
Yeah.
It illuminated this is a very what I learned a man's locker room or an all man space is tough in the best sense of the word. It's so tough. It's you're made up of that toughness, right? Every once in a while a man needs to be able to cry, to exercise the
Mhm.
feminine parts of him. When I say that, think of the things that you go to your mother with or you go to your wife with. Now imagine if you're able to do that in a locker room, not where the woman is. There are very few times I went into the actual locker room because I respected the man's space. But I'll use a very concrete example. We had a kid who would just get very high strung in practice. If things weren't going his way, he would just crash out, as the kids
Mhm.
would say. And I started to take him on walks when that happened. I'm like, hey, let's come over here and let's just take a walk around. And his nervous system would decrease, or the intensity would come down. And no male coach was going to do that,
Mhm.
but that's okay. That's not saying, hey, male coaches go do that. I think that women do that better. It's just something that we have, just like people always say, "Oh, you need to go stand on the front lines." As a woman, I don't think so. I think men need to stand on the front lines. You
Mhm.
guys are built, you're built different. That's how you're born into the world. And so, to bridge the question, I think I illuminated the gaps in that particular program by being able to show up as who I truly am, which I just so happens to be a woman, but I knew I was well respected.
Yeah.
The boys never questioned me. They also had to learn how to be respectful of me in a space. So that, for example, when I was around, they didn't say the B word. They
Mhm.
didn't, but it cleaned them up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cleaned them up a little bit. And then the last one I'll say, just to give you a more tangible one, women are very organized, and men can be too, obviously, but women are very organized and thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I made the season smoother
Yeah.
than if I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if those would come up if you asked him why he hired me, or that came to mind initially, but
Yeah.
that's what I think came of it.
Yeah. One of the things I want to latch onto is we talked about being empathetic earlier, being able to meet somebody where they are, taking them on a
Right.
walk, right? It's not something that traditionally we're going to step into because we're not taught to emote, right? It's almost
Right.
forbidden. And so one of the things I've been trying to break down over the years is helping young men see that's okay, right? And we hold a men's group for the boys. We do certain things just to kind of let them understand that, to your point, what are you going to talk to your mom about? What are you going to talk to your wife about? Why can't you just talk to somebody else that's your friend about it? You got to keep this wall up. So I love that. That's but one of the purposes that you found for yourself there and that you were able to provide that because to your point, we don't usually have that. The other thing that I was curious about that you brought up, so I worked with his son. I worked with Steph, some high-level NBA players. What does work with mean? What is that he saw you work with them? And what work
Yeah.
did you do with these NBA guys that then was transferable, so to speak? Was it mental coaching, was on the court stuff? What I'm curious.
Yeah, no, good question. On-court stuff. So I worked heavily alongside Brandon Payne, who's Steph's
Yeah.
trainer. And so it would consist of one, worked with Steph. I helped run his underrated tour. So his underrated camp through a
Mhm.
couple summers. But on the court, I would be part of his actual workouts with his trainer. Drills, shooting drills, ball handling drills, but I was the one passing.
Yep.
I was the one doing the drills.
Yep.
And Brandon, his lead trainer, would be directing us. So I did that consistently for 2 summers, and
Yep.
that kind of, it was so fun. It was so fun.
How did you fall into that? And
Uh,
while you're thinking about it, it's funny. So
I
Steph's
just want to know where I want to start, but yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so that's why. Why are you thinking about it? So Steph's first camp, he ran here on our campus. Yeah,
Cool.
and they did it for a couple years, and then they moved it to Hawaii, and then whatever else happened. But
Yeah.
we really didn't have the facilities to make the value proposition worth it because we only have
Mhm.
one gym, other than people wanting to see Steph, right? So it was a good starting place, and he's down here all the time to golf. But it's like, how do you find yourself in that space? And again, super curious.
Yeah. A friend of mine was working the underrated tour, and he said, "Do you want to come coach?" I was like, "Yeah." It paid a couple $100, but it's one of those things, especially earlier on, you're always looking for opportunities where you could show up,
Yep.
right? There comes
Yep.
a point where, and I'll stand by this, you should not do everything for free. Certain opportunities lend themselves, definitely show up with the right heart.
Yeah.
So he I made the investment to go. I had to pay my own way or whatever. And I get there, it really Brandon Payne was running it. Steph wasn't at this particular stop.
Yeah.
And this is a fun story. Great question. We're in the room with the coaches, and Brandon's leading the room. And we were tasked with identifying the underrated players of that region.
Hmm.
So we were in Texas, identifying the underrated players of that region. So we're in the room, and it's like draft day. We're like, who are we cutting? Who are we keeping? And we didn't have, when I tell you, the most unorganized, it was so chaotic. It was like people just trying to remember numbers. And so I see a whiteboard, and I go get the whiteboard, and I bring it over, and I start writing on it. And it just gives the room organization that
Yeah.
it needed.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, Brandon was like, "Hey, who wants to run a drill?" I raise my hand. I do a drill. He comes over, and he was like, "Hey, great job, great drill, whatever." So I'm coaching a team, and his assistant comes and gets me. She was like, "Brandon wants to talk to you." He comes over. He goes, "You don't need to be over there with them. You need to be over here with me. Like, you need to be on this side of what we're doing." Because it is how I thought, to my point of how I opened. I don't know if I said this
You
on air,
did.
but
I want to be head coach. I need to
head
run it.
coach, there's a difference.
There's a difference.
And people can see it.
Yeah.
People can see it.
Yeah.
And so it didn't shock me that by the end of that year, and by the end of year 2 and year 3, I was like alongside Brandon and leading the
Mhm.
entire camp.
Yeah.
So because of that access, it would just be like, "Hey, Jerica, do you want to come work out with Steph?"
Yeah.
So me and Steph were able to build a relationship, and obviously I was able to learn a ton and work his Curry camps and
Yep.
do all those things.
Love that. Awesome. Okay. Now I want to go back to what got me here in the first place. So make room for her is what are we calling the brand, right?
Let's call it the brand, the umbrella.
The brand, the umbrella. And I just opened your post here and it's got music. So I apologize for that. But I came across a post that the title was 5 Things Girls Need from Their Coach and Most Never Get. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And sent it to all of my coaches in a text thread that we have. But talk a little bit about how the brand got started, what was the impetus and motivation for that while you're doing these other things, right? You're working with Mike Davis, and then I think that's when you said you wanted out. That's my term.
Yeah.
You needed a sabbatical, and then you
Yeah.
ended up with Nike, right? So there's this transitional period, and then you ultimately start doing this as well as what you're doing. But very curious about the how this got going, and then I'll get some follow-ups.
Yeah. So after the Detroit Mercy year, which was it was a tough year, but that wasn't why I knew I was done coaching. I knew I was done coaching because one, you have to want to coach. There's never a moment I think that, oh, I kind of want to coach, I'm going to keep doing it. No, once it's done, it should be done. So I realized that it had just served its purpose. After that, I wanted to sit for a second. I found myself interviewing for jobs and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't even know if I wanted to stay in basketball. And I interviewed, this is funny, the owner of the Pistons. I'd interviewed with her for something. And she goes, Jerica, I'm going to stop you. This is great. You want this job? It was like an entrepreneur, leading girls to entrepreneurship role or something. She goes, this is great. But why are you leaving basketball? Basketball is what you do. You've done it your whole life. That's stupid. So I'm not going to hire you. Like, I'm sure you'd be great, but no, because I want you to go use your superpower. I want you to stay in basketball. So I let myself just be. And through that, I realized that there was a need for girls' voices to be heard. And there really wasn't. It's not that there's not platforms that don't amplify girls. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
What I was that once I got back on Instagram after being off for 10 years or whatever it was, I wasn't hearing their voices. And because I had coached them, I knew what they had to say. And what they say could impact the world. I fundamentally believe that. And so I say, I give them the stage. Let me set this up and give them the stage. So I created a campaign called Her Story. So I go and I sit with young girls, not women, girls, to bring out their story. And 100% of them were like, I've never been interviewed like this. When they're talking, I'm seeing, I want to say my first interview was with actually a former player. And she gave me this example. She said, I actually played soccer first. She ended up playing Division I basketball. I played soccer first. And however old, she was young, like under 8. And she said, my head coach cussed me out. He was cussing me out and I quit. Mm-hmm. And then I went to basketball because my dad was there and it was a safe space. So that came through right around the same time. So I consult with Positive Coaching Alliance. And so I'm in my meetings and they're always looking at how to better coaches, right? How to give coaches resources, everything. One of the key pillars that one of their key initiatives right now is increasing the participation of girls and women in sports. They bring me into the room and I realize that there's not many women and there's not many women who had played the sport. So when they're describing like girls are quitting sports at rapid rates. And I was like, why? The data says it's not fun. But even the coaches in the room, the male coaches and some female coaches, it's not fun for them. And it's not fun for them. And their parents this and da-da-da. Great, cool, hear you. Why is it not fun? Why isn't it fun? Do we ask these girls why it's not fun? Because there's something happens before it's not fun. So I'm taking the data that I got from all of these interviews that I had done and from my lived experience. I know better. Yep. But I have something to point to. It's not fun because it's not safe a lot of the time, especially when they're really young. They don't feel safe in it, but they're not going to say that. They're going to say it's not fun. So what I realized was, here we go, I'll bridge it. They're like, Jerica, how do we get more girls to participate in sports? Or how do we retain? How do we, not have them quit by the age of 30? How do we get more women in coaching? Look, huge overhaul. That's a systematic change that's going to take a long time. So my mind went to, what can I do right now? I can go into somewhere and I can educate the current coaches on how to do it better, establish that knowledge, because what I do know for sure is we just coach the way we were coached for the most part. There's not a ton of knowledge around, I would say, curriculum, because there also has to be intention because these are adults.
Especially in basketball. It exists in soccer. It exists in some of the other sports, but in basketball, it's the Wild West out there.
Fair point. So basketball is what I knew the most. So I was like, how do we educate our coaches with the intent of giving girls what they need? Because what I also know is you try to plug and play girls into a boys system, just like you try to plug and play women into a men's system, and it doesn't always align. So That is where Coach Her Right was born.
The interviews you did, how long did you keep that alive?
Oh, it's still going.
It's still going. Okay. How often do you do it? What's the sample size at this point of the Her Story interviews?
Yep. It's about 15 episodes, so like one a month.
Okay. And this is, you said girls. So what age group are we talking about?
12 to 21.
12 to 21. Perfect. And when you say they don't feel safe, can you elaborate on that? Because, and this isn't what you're doing, and this isn't what these kids are doing. They're too young for that to a certain degree, but that's become at times almost a weaponized term on this
100%.
campus. And where,
100%.
yeah, and we'll have, oh boy, I'm gonna keep this very brief, but that will come out. I don't feel safe
Yep.
because the kid that lives next door to you in the dorm, her friend knocked on your window instead of theirs because they were confused, and therefore you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Excuse me, what are you talking about?
No.
So anyway,
Weaponized
I
as well.
asked, talk to me.
So I'm gonna talk about it from the vantage point of legitimate
Yes,
safety.
please.
There is a world where that word gets oversaturated and
Mhm.
weaponized and used in the wrong way. It
Yes.
gets used to fire people who don't deserve to be fired. I'm aware of all of those things. So
Mhm.
I'm only going to speak to this side over
Yeah,
here,
please. No,
legitimate one.
yep.
Where I lean into it is, to your point, the younger demographic that don't have the language to say they don't feel safe. I'll give an example. This has happened more times than I'd like to admit,
Okay.
but it's the world we live in. I'm coaching at a high school and I was the head coach. It wasn't Country Day, it was another school. I wake up one morning and I look in the mirror, and this is true story. I look in the mirror and I feel like the mirror talked back and was like, Jerica, sit your team down today and tell them that they can use their voice. I was like, okay. It was convicting. So I go into practice that morning. I'm like, hey, before we start practicing, my team knows I don't listen. Practice starts at 6 a.m. 5:50. Y'all are on the floor shooting around. There ain't no sitting, none of that. So I was like, hey, sit down. I need to tell you something. I told them, hey, just want you to know you all have a voice. Use it. It was not connected to anything. If you tell me something, I'll believe you. I wasn't even thinking
Right.
safety. I wasn't thinking anything was going on in my program.
Mhm.
Nothing. It was literally just tell them they need to use their voice. We go through practice. After practice, my two captains come over, say, hey, coach, can you come in the locker room? We have something to tell you. My entire team, all 15 of them, one of the assistant coaches, who happened to be a male, because this happens with females too, female coaches. One of the male coaches on our team or on the staff has been inappropriately touching us in practice, like sneakily, has been saying inappropriate things, has been this, say less. I believe you. And I said this, mark my words, you will never have to see him again. The examples they gave me were and I put this in my culture workbook. I put this in there. You cannot lead with, I don't believe you, let me go. You can't lead with, let me go fact check first. You have to believe them first and then go fact check. That's where the weaponizing piece comes in. I hear you that you don't feel safe. I believe you. Now we investigate, because you can upend somebody's livelihood if taken the wrong way. All of it deserves its rightful attention. So I go through the process. I go talk to my AD. We investigate. Sure enough, we go look at, oh, it makes me want to cry. We go look at the film, and he was literally, it was like hiding in plain sight. I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And this dude is touching my kids. It was crazy. It was crazy. So bring my heart rate down a second. So later that day, one of my players comes to me and says, hey, player A is in the counselor's office. She's upset. So I'm thinking she's upset just because of what they just shared. This coach has a AAU program that he's had for years, where he's had a couple of my girls come through since they were young. She sits me down and says, he's been touching us like this since we were 9 years old. And we used to have, meeting at our slumber parties with our team. We used to try to plan, what should we tell our parents? Because we don't think they'll believe us. And what are we going to do? Overthrow the dictator? And we want to keep playing basketball. 9 years old. So she said, I went to my parents and said, hey, coach, whatever is making me feel uncomfortable. And her parents responded and said, you just have to fight through adversity. He's just tough. He's just whatever, right? And we can make that face, but how many times though do we say that? Oh no, that's just coaching. That's just coaching. That's just coaching. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes they're just coaching. Sometimes they're just pushing you outside of your comfort zone. That is true. So that was where her parents landed. So later that day, her dad called me in tears and was like, Jerica, she told us that, but we thought that it was just it was just coaching. Had we know? And then he said, why didn't she tell me more? Because she feels like she can't. Because she feels like she can't. Mm-hmm. So it took me saying, and that's just the girl experience.
Yeah.
It took me saying verbatim, because this had been going on for a month or more, long enough. It took me sitting them down and saying, I'll believe you if you tell me. I had to say that first.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, and I'll say that happened at multiple institutions that I was at, which is largely in part why I moved through certain roles pretty quickly, because there's, and I think this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly, which is totally fine because I don't care. Like, I just don't. But there were times when I wouldn't, right? Because I got looked at as, I would say, by whoever else I was blowing the whistle on, whatever you want to say. I say protecting these kids.
Yep.
Because I didn't do it without evidence. And there were coaches who were witnesses who had been witnessing said behavior for years and were so afraid to be exiled from the industry.
Yeah.
For telling on the predator.
Yeah.
And I totally get it. It's institutional. I totally get it. However, that's not me. Again, I'm a head coach. I am at the forefront. Yep. So I understand that is not everybody's experience. Not everybody's not. Fire me. Yeah. I don't care. So I have experiences with my kids, with my former players, where they have said to me, Coach, you saved us. And so ain't no telling how many girls we actually saved because of, and then I'll round it out this, because this is an important part. Going back to the coach who my kids called me in to tell me about, I knew that he had been coaching one of my clients' daughters.
Okay.
So I called him and I said, hey, ask your daughter. Just ask her. Don't assume. Just ask her. Give her the space.
Yeah.
Make room for her. That's it. Make room for her. He asked her, she goes, oh yeah, he would smack us on the butt or tell us to take our jerseys off in front of him or and her dad, he was like, Jerica, what? Why didn't she tell me? Because she feels like she can't. It's not this overcast. So when we say, hey, and I'm talking about young girls, because to your point, older girls tend to have the language.
Yeah.
Younger girls do not have the language to even say, I don't feel safe, or to say this isn't appropriate. What I'm in is a position of there's an authority figure over me that has this power. And I haven't been trained in our society to think that anyone would believe me over him, over her, this authoritative figure. So the reason why I built this truly is for that. Yep. That is where the core of it is. But I understand the reason why I built it is, let's do something to where we don't got to keep doing that. Let's get ahead of it, because I think, and I think this is fundamentally true. If coaches who think like that or have gotten away with it or whatever the case may be, or not knowledgeable on how to coach, let's just, that if they see that something exists where these young girls or boys, because I have a son, so I've protected him too, that there's something out there that's activating people's consciousness around it, they might think twice about their actions. Yeah. It may not even take a curriculum or whatever the case may be. But if I'm aware that something's out there, my goal is to shift the consciousness around it. And I'm going to start with very tangible tools.
Yeah, for sure. And as you described that, the second slide on the post I read is questions, not commands. And you called the dad and said, just ask her, right? So
Ah,
I don't know, you don't necessarily have to go through your entire curriculum here, but just talk really quickly about each of these and why they're so important with the young women, right? So questions, not commands, emotional safety, to be seen as a person, not just a player, a coach who keeps learning. Those are the things that were on that slide deck that made me reach out.
yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but
Please
question,
do.
questions, not commands. I think, yeah, you're married.
Yep.
Women,
And I got two daughters and a son. I got the full
oh, okay, yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I've coached boys and girls, so I got the
Right.
whole background.
Women and men are wired differently. It's not wrong. They're just wired differently. If you come to a woman curious and not demanding, you'll get a better version of her. You'll get a woman that doesn't feel like she has to armor up. That starts when we're really young. We are not, like I said, we are not conditioned to use our voice. We're just not. So when someone asks us a question, we're empowered to answer it, but we're empowered to feel like there's space for us.
Yeah.
But there's space for us. And so when a girl, the reason why I put that in there in terms of coaching distinctively, she'll shut down if you over time, maybe not immediately, and every girl is different. I'm not saying this is
Yep.
true for everyone, but for the most part, in my experience, the more you demand of her without asking her, or I'll do it the other way. Let's just say playing time.
Yeah.
If you just sit her and
Mhm.
you just say, you're sitting, and that goes on, and you wonder why she's starting to shrink.
Yeah.
If you would have came to her and said, do you think you should be playing as many minutes as you're playing, and why? Or, hey, I'm gonna take you out of the starting lineup. These are the reasons that I have. What questions do you have so that I can better explain it to you? You literally make the space. And that's just how, in my experience, it's just how females are wired.
Yeah.
That's questions, not commands. What's the second one?
The next one was emotional safety.
Which we talked. I feel like my whole spiel was
Yeah.
about,
Yep. Got that one. And then you had to be seen as a person, not just a player.
which is, we always say it,
Mm.
but that's why I say empathy.
Yeah.
I have really good friends in my PCA group that are coaches, and they're like, Jerica, why do you keep talking about empathy? Who cares? And I'm like, that's how you see a person for a person, though.
Yeah.
That literally is the ingredient. If you don't have empathy for somebody,
Yeah.
or if you don't practice empathy for somebody, how are you going to see them as a person and not just a person who's performing for you?
Yeah.
And that's what I think coaches have to realize is, as coaches, we have such a responsibility to this human. We look back, and I don't know if you can say this to be true. If you're lucky to have, obviously parents are your core, but I would say 100% of the people I talk to, when they say who is the most impactful person in your life, it's usually a coach. And I'm not just talking about sports. It's the
Mhm.
person who takes the role of a coach. It's a mentor or a teacher or
Mhm.
somebody in the community, but it's usually a coach.
Yeah.
So we have a responsibility to see them as people
Yeah.
and make sure that we have the tools in order to do that.
Part of that, and I think this goes under realized and underspoken, is because we spend more time with them than anyone else, right? If you're going through a traditional curriculum in a class, it's 45 minutes, 60, maybe 70. If it's that, it's every other day, right? Versus 45 minutes a day versus you're with them 2 hours a day for 12 weeks and then off season, et cetera, right? So just by nature of compounding interest, you just
Yeah.
have that relationship. In addition to, if you can, your next slide was a coach who continues to learn, right? You grow into, oh, I never really realized how important it was to ask them about their day rather
Right.
than, hey, let's run this set or whatever we're doing in
Right.
this moment. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the last piece that you had on this particular slide. I'm sure there's a whole lot more, but in regards to, we've already talked about this in regards to identifying, I don't know, but like, how do you continue to learn, right? What are the steps for that? What are the things that I think we get, I don't want to say lazy, but complacent. Let's say complacent at.
Yeah, we do. You're a coach. I say this, like, motivation is fleeting,
Yeah.
discipline is not. And we
Yeah.
know that in order to have a great team, that team has to be very disciplined and not rely solely on motivation. When you have people or coaches that are like, oh, okay, I'm motivated to learn. Cool. Are you disciplined? Are you disciplining yourself to learn? Because to me, that's commitment and intention. And that when I look at coaches, when I look at administration, and let's just say hiring coaches, not, hey, I want to learn. I'm open to, here we go. I'm open to learning versus I'm committed to learning.
Yep.
Key distinction.
Yep.
So I think coaches need to be committed to it. You need to be able to, for example, when I was coaching at any point in my career, but when I became a head coach, I made it a point to go to as many practices for other coaches as I could through the off season. I probably did 50 in the off season. And from like Lorenzo Romar to obviously Mike Davis to like Noel Quinn, like I'm like to the volleyball coach, the AAU volleyball coach, just I want to soak up as much as I can, but I was intentional about that. And there were days that I'm like, I don't have to do this. I do not have to do this, but my kids deserve it. Like my to my point about responsibility, you have a responsibility to grow and learn for them. So it's not a okay, yeah, I'm open to learning. No, you need to be committed to it and you need to set certain disciplines and be able to show up, make it a habit.
Yep.
There we go. Make it a habit. Don't make it a feeling, make it a habit.
Yep. Love that. Okay, going back to make room for her versus coach her right. What's your distinction in those two things and how do they apply differently, or what are the tools and the systems that you've created in different spaces there?
Yes, make room for her is the umbrella. So think of like a holding company.
Yep.
I have a book that's coming out. I have like obviously Coach Her Right. There's courses and curriculum that's going to come out that's probably under a different name.
Yep.
My like content distribution. What else do I have? Just I would say make room for her gives me the space to create products for her that it can live under. So make room for her is what I want my legacy to be, which is put it on the tombstone. What pathways did you create or contribute to for women and girls?
Yeah.
That's it. And I think so much of our experience as females is here we go. This is the mic drop. This is the mic drop. So I have a son. And I had this thought, Justin, recently I was like, I don't have to make room for him. He takes up space. Boys come into the world where space is just for them. You don't have to tell a boy to raise his hand in class. You don't have to tell a boy. A key distinction in coaching is, or what I've seen, the difference between males and females. A man or a boy, put me to the front of the line. I'll go out there and mess up. That's fine. A girl's going to step back and be like, no, somebody else do it. Let me make sure because we want to get it perfect. Women, girls have to be like, the room has to be created for them to walk into. Whereas a boy or a man, y'all got it already. The space is yours. What I realized with my son is that doesn't mean that he's a finished product. That means he needs to be guided through the space. He needs to be nurtured through the space. He needs to be given the knowledge to show up in that space, to lead that space. But a woman, a girl, we gotta literally make room for her. So that is it's the mission of it all. But everything that I'm gonna build under, or that I'm building underneath it, is going to make room for her.
No, I love that. And your analogy, I wanted to interrupt in a moment. I joke about it and I say that as a blanket generality, guys are irrationally confident and delusionally confident. And girls, you are fighting them to believe in themselves the same way that we do. And not guys, but the way I believe in this kid, you need to think that about yourself. And it's like, no, look at this guy. He can't even play and he thinks he's going to the NBA. I need you to embrace that. All right. Last question. And this is perfect based on what you said in regards to always learning. I'm always curious how people are challenging their belief system, especially in a world that we currently live in that is extremely polarized, and you are not encouraged to I don't want to say switch sides, but to challenge what you currently believe, right? And I think part of growth is looking at those things you hold true and questioning them and either validating them or changing your mind. So the question boils down to what is something you've most recently changed your mind on? And it doesn't have to be coaching related. It could be whatever, but you were intentional about, I used to believe this, and actually after further review and study, I'm over here. And here is why. It's the growth mindset question, coach.
This might be a little ethereal for
Yeah, it's all good. I love it.
the chat, but the most recent and
Mhm.
the most transformative revelation that I've had today
That's what I want.
in my life, literally in my life. The belief that love is possession, that you possess people, you that if you controlling someone else's emotions or how they feel about you or how they are with you, or if they're not how you think they should be to you, or if they have to show up in the way that you think they need to show up, is not love. It's not. And I realized that I'll speak for myself, but I've been around a lot of people in my life. We think that is what it is. It's an attachment. We think love is attachment, and it's not. It's actually freedom.
Yep.
It's actually like you're free to be yourself, and I'm free to be myself, and we can show up together, and it's fine. You can go. I know this is a coaching platform, but it can apply anywhere. The freedom that I have knowing that, let's just say my significant other wants to go hang out with his kids. We have different kids from previous marriages. He wants to go hang out with his kids. Him going and doing that has nothing to do with him not wanting to spend time with me. And when the moment in which I understood that.
And you said this was recently.
This is recent.
I love it.
Recent. Now, I'll say this. It went from cerebrally, I knew that. I can reference the books that say it. I talked about, I know, but to live in it, that's a
click. Yep.
click to where it's to the point now where I'm like, how can I serve that more? Because it makes me feel so good. It makes me feel
liberated.
Just completely liberated. That means I'm not attached to anybody and nobody's attached to me. But that doesn't mean I'm not loved. That doesn't mean that he's not loved or she's not loved, right? And I think bringing it full circle, even to coaching, it's like with the players, right? If a player's gonna show up, no, I'll use this. I'll reference mom. I'll do a mom thing. Yesterday, this happened last night. I have a teenage boy. I have a teenage boy and I'm a single mom, okay? And I'm sure your kids have.
I have a teenage boy. I'm not a single mom, but I was raised by
it don't
a single
matter,
mother.
teenagers.
Yeah, I was raised by a single mom, so I'm gonna get this. Go ahead.
Teenagers are just like, ugh, you're moody, and I just hate it. He gets out of practice and he just has this attitude about him. And there was a time in life where the attitude would irritate me. His attitude would irritate me. And I said to myself, his attitude has nothing to do with me. As long as he's not disrespectful, I'm fine. No. But his attitude has nothing to do with me. But I used to think that it did. Oh, you're not gonna have an attitude around me. You may be able to have an attitude around other people. That boy is in his own world. He's in his own world. That it don't have anything to do with me. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, and it was a process, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, you're detached, Jerica. Let him be over there and you could be over here. That doesn't mean I have to engage with you while you have this little mood about you. So I wasn't ignoring him, obviously, but I just chose not to engage in that in any way.
Yeah.
So we're quiet and it's fine. We go out to dinner, whatever. It was fine. It's my kid. We get to the restaurant, we sit down. So maybe 20 minutes of this has gone by. And we sit down and I think he's on his phone. And there are things what I'm saying is there were times where I used to be like, my son's name is Jeriah, what are you doing? Get off your phone. I would try to control the situation or I would try to control him. And so I sat and realized I'm not going to let this energy mess up myself. And I don't know, maybe 20 minutes later, our food comes and he puts his phone down and he's, Mom, practice was great. And I'm like, I would have Not I would have. I
Yeah.
used to let that get to me in a way where I would come at him, son, you need to do
Mhm.
this and you need to do this and you need to, and then that has in the past elongated that energy in a way that didn't need to last that long.
Yeah.
So being able to detach from that,
Yep.
oh my goodness, I'm like, everybody wins.
There you
Everybody
go.
wins.
There you
So
go.
freedom from the belief that
Yep.
love is possession.
There you go. I love that. And that's it, embracing your internal Buddhism there. Suffering comes from
100%.
desire and attachment. So let that go and all is well.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I might need to come down to the San Diego there and spend some more time because this has
Yeah,
been
check us
enjoyable. I
out.
need to do that. But or if you want to come up here to God's country and hang out, I try not to leave this place very often because there's no place better. But that's for another day. Appreciate you jumping on. It's been awesome.
Likewise. Thank you.